Scientific advancements in biomedical research progressed in these fields and countless more due to a myriad of scientists around the globe, all converging on one single discovery: the HeLa cell line, the most widely used cell line in the history of mankind. This extraordinary cell line has an owner, a woman, Henrietta Lacks, who never even got the opportunity to know just how special she was. Born on August 1st, 1920, Henrietta Lacks was one of 10 children, a great-great-granddaughter of a slave. After her mother died when she was only 4 years old, her father moved the family to Clover, Virginia, where the children were divided up among relatives to be raised. Henrietta lived with her grandfather in a 2-story log cabin, which was once the slave quarters on the very plantation that her white great-grandfather had owned. She worked in the tobacco fields for most of her childhood. Henrietta married her husband, David Lacks, in 1941 at the age of 20. Later that year, the Lacks family would move to Turner Station, Maryland, in Baltimore County, where David would work for Bethlehem Steel, and Henrietta would raise their 5 children. Shortly after delivering her last child, she noticed abnormal bleeding associated with a mass. This led her back to the same hospital where she had just delivered her baby, the world-renowned Johns Hopkins Hospital. The gynecologist on duty, Dr. Howard Jones, discovered a smooth growth about the size of a quarter on her cervix. A biopsy was taken and Henrietta was diagnosed with cancer of the cervix. Her cervical cancer was treated with radioactive radium tubes sutured into her cervix. During her treatment period, an additional piece of tissue from the tumor was taken without her knowledge or consent. That specimen was given to a cancer researcher at Johns Hopkins, Dr. George Guy. With this tissue sample, the world of scientific research would forever be changed. Dr. Guy observed something remarkable about these cells. All prior attempts to culture human cells lasted only a few days, which was insufficient time to perform different tests on the same sample. However, Henrietta's cell line reproduced at a very rapid rate and could divide multiple times without dying, thus becoming immortal. This cell line was named HeLa. As the scientific community was celebrating a discovery of immortality, Henrietta was enduring months of suffering as her cancer spread rapidly. Henrietta succumbed to metastatic cervical cancer. Despite her death, her immortal cells would continue to live on and reach far beyond any expectation of that time. In an uncanny coincidence, on the very day that Lacks died, Dr. Guy appeared on the WAAM television station in Baltimore, holding up a bottle of HeLa cells close to the camera and said,
"It's quite possible that from fundamental studies such as these, that we will be able to learn a way by which cancer can be completely wiped out."
Samples were sent by mail to researchers across the country and around the globe. Today, companies such as Novartis Pharmaceuticals, Viatris Pharmaceuticals, and Ultragenyx have used HeLa cells to create and patent new drugs and gene therapies. Scientists even sent HeLa cells into outer space to study the effect of zero gravity on human flesh, and put samples of HeLa cells near atomic test sites to study the consequences of radiation on human cells. Even though the HeLa cells have been in widespread use for decades, the source of the cells was not known to the world until 1970, when an article with Henrietta's name was published following Dr. Guy's death. Even more surprising was that the Lacks family was unaware of the cell's use in research until 22 years after her death, and this discovery occurred by pure coincidence.
My grandfather's wife, Babette Lacks, was actually at dinner at a friend's house, and when their introductions were being made, and they introduced her as Babette Lacks, the gentleman that was there said, "Do you know a Henrietta Lacks?" And she was like, that was my mother-in-law. And then that's how she initially found out that, hey, we've been using these cells at Hopkins, for research. And it came from, Henrietta Lacks. And that was the one of the first initial ways that the family found out about that.
Shortly thereafter, researchers made a discovery that since HeLa cells were so prolific, they could cross-contaminate other cell cultures. In order to determine which cells were HeLa cells and which weren't, scientists needed the family's DNA to make a map of Henrietta's genes. Labs contacted family members to acquire blood samples. The phone calls and letters requesting family members for testing were the door that opened the Lax family to the world of medical research. The Lax family's discovery of Henrietta's cells being used for research across the globe ran the gamut of emotions. Pride that her cells were being used for good, but confusion that her cells could be used without consent. How could so many people and companies have made billions of dollars on Henrietta's cells that were taken without her permission, and nothing was shared, knowledge or money, with her family? The Henrietta Lacks story brings to light a number of controversial issues in patients' rights and the responsibilities of the medical research community. First and foremost was the issue of informed consent. Henrietta's cells were obtained and used for decades without her or her family's knowledge and consent. Although these actions were commonplace during that time and did not violate any laws or regulations, they brought to light the glaring ethical need for patients to have control of their bodies and medical decisions. Additionally, in 2013, European scientists published the genomic sequence of the HeLa cell. Although the intent was purely academic, it would be viewed as a violation of a patient's right to medical privacy, since the genetic code could reveal health information of the Lax's biologically related family members. This led to an agreement between the National Institute of Health and the Lax family that enabled them to have some control over the access to the DNA sequence of the HeLa cell line, and 2 family members would be included in a committee that would oversee access to the genomic sequence. Through Henrietta's story, the importance of informed consent and medical privacy has come to light. Currently, informed consent is a core doctrine and a requirement for all medical procedures and research, with the basic principle to protect the autonomy of human subjects, which states that the welfare and interests of a subject participating in clinical research are always above the society's interests and welfare. Additionally, the privacy rule, as stated by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, ensures the right to privacy of an individual's health information and provides guidelines to who can view it. These laws are a reflection of the new responsibilities of the medical world to ensure informed consent and to protect patient privacy, 2 aspects that were violated by the collection and distribution of the HeLa cell line. The contribution of the HeLa cells cannot be overstated. It has contributed to 11,000 patents, 3 Nobel Prize-winning research studies, and millions of dollars for the biotech industry. A tragic dichotomy exists because over those same years since Henrietta's death, many of the Lax family members have lived in poverty, unable to afford health insurance. Only recently has this injustice begun to be rectified. In 2021, a lawsuit was filed against Thermo Fisher for mass-producing HeLa cells and commercially selling them for research purposes and generating millions of dollars in profits.
A settlement was reached late Monday after sealed court proceedings at the federal courthouse downtown. The terms of that settlement are confidential, but the family is claiming victory both financially and historically.
Although obtaining and using the HeLa cells without Henrietta's knowledge and consent was legal at the time, it was certainly not ethical. The impact of the HeLa cell line continues to help push forth the frontier of medical research, but now we can honor the woman they came from, a wife who enjoyed wearing red nail polish, and an adoring mother who loved to cook. Through recognizing Henrietta and her family's rights, the research community can tackle the expanding responsibilities in a complex field.